it's Sandra. Welcome to another episode of Asexualise, My Asexual Life. This is a place to be for education about asexuality. So stay tuned because episode is all about busting through the myths and stereotypes of asexuality. So, what is asexuality? Really, truly, do you even know? If you're new to this channel, probably not. So, over the last week or two, or maybe a lot more than that, I've been having some very weird comments from people on my YouTube channel, some of which I've completely deleted because I think they're very rude and highly inappropriate. So, have you ever experienced a scenario or multiple scenarios where people just really don't understand asexuality or what it is? Maybe you are confused yourself as to what asexuality is and what it isn't. So in this video, I'm going to go through with you the main things about asexuality, what it is, what it isn't, and bust through some of those myths and stereotypes that people seem to have in their head. With it being Pride Month, there seems to be a lot of resistance to the word pride, and so when I'm doing videos with pride in them, there seems to be a lot of people that are kind of trolling this channel, sometimes writing rude comments, saying things that aren't true about asexuality. So I really want to set the record straight. First of all, pride is how important and good you feel about something or being something. Anyone can take pride in who they are, their identity, what they do, and just being themselves. So pride, in the sense of the word pride, means taking pride, being happy with who you are, what you're doing, why you're doing it, right? Pride in this month is related to the LGBT plus QIA community. LGBT plus QIA, the A in the acronym does stand for asexuality. It's also known these days to stand for aromantic and agender. However, aromantic is a romantic or lack of romantic attraction. So it's something to do with the romantic spectrum, as in there's zero romantic attraction for pure aromantics, but there are also grey aromantics, which then feature also as part of the asexual spectrum. So you can get aromantic or aromantic asexuals, and you can get aromantic or aromantic, as most people pronounce it, sexuals. Right? These are people that don't experience any romantic attraction whatsoever. So nowadays it's said that aromantics are part of the LGBT spectrum, but aromanticism is not a sexuality. It's in and of itself, if you know what I mean. It's a way someone feels romantic or non-romantic. A pure aromantic doesn't experience any romantic attraction. So an asexual person, a pure asexual, doesn't experience any sexual attraction whatsoever. But you've also got something called grey asexuals. Now, the grey asexuals only experience sexual attraction when a deep emotional bond has been formed, maintained, and sustained in the cases of demisexuals, or only in limited, rare, or specific circumstances, which the demisexual falls under, or they experience sexual attraction but not enough to want to act on it. So basically, the grey asexuals are split into two categories: ones that do experience it but not enough to want to act on it, and those who only experience it in limited, rare, or specific or infrequent circumstances, right? So I hope that's kind of like helped you. Now, within the asexual spectrum, there are non-romantic asexuals, so that, aromantic asexuals, those are absence of romantic attraction, and there are grey romantics, and there are romantics, right? So an aromantic, a pure aromantic, doesn't experience any romantic attraction whatsoever. If an aromantic is asexual, they don't experience any romantic attraction, and if they're a pure asexual, they don't experience any sexual attraction whatsoever either. But they could be an aromantic asexual and a grey asexual, meaning they experience sexual attraction either only under limited, rare, or specific circumstances, or they experience it enough They experience it, but not enough to want to act on it. So they experience it enough to be aware of it, but not enough to want to act on it. But you can also get grey romantics. So a grey romantic, similarly to a grey asexual, grey romantics can experience romantic attraction, but only in limited, rare, or specific circumstances, or they can experience it, but not enough to want to act on that romantic attraction. Then you've got Coupio romantics. They are those that desire a romantic relationship without experiencing any romantic attraction. You can have a Coupio sexual that doesn't experience any sexual attraction, but they desire to have a sexual relationship. A Coupio romantic desires to have a romantic relationship despite not experiencing any romantic attraction. So these are different variances of asexual. So asexuality is a sexual orientation that's in broad terms based on a lack of sexual attraction. Now, in recent times, it's been changed in terms of definition on a big site called asexuality.org, because they felt that grey asexuals weren't actually included in the lack of sexual attraction definition. But this is actually not true, because lack has two meanings. Lack means you don't experience anything of something, or lack can also mean that you don't experience enough of it. So lack can mean you lack that thing completely, or you lack it as in you don't have enough of it, which would cover both pure asexuals and grey asexuals. And then asexual is a spectrum ranging from those who are pure asexuals to grey asexuals, but there's loads of subcategories in between those. And I've spoke about the aromantics, those that don't experience any romantic attraction, but also the grey romantics, the Coupio romantics. Now, a demi-romantic is someone who can only experience romantic attraction when a deep emotional bond has been formed. Like a demisexual can only experience sexual attraction when a deep emotional bond has been formed. So someone could be demi-romantic and demisexual. But there are also the romantics who do experience romantic attraction. I'm a hetero romantic. So I experience romantic attraction to the opposite gender. Hetero meaning opposite. So heterosexual means someone who experiences sexual attraction towards the opposite gender. Heteromantic is someone who experiences romantic attraction to the opposite gender. I'm female. I was assigned female at birth. Born female if you prefer to use that different language. It depends where you come from as to which preference you have for the language that you want to use. So this is inclusive for everyone on this channel. And I'm female. That's how I identify. And so I'm attracted to the opposite gender, in my case, males. I'm only attracted to guys, romantically though, not sexually. So hetero meaning the opposite gender, in my case, guys, romantically. You can also get homoromantic asexuals. Homo meaning the same gender. So a homosexual person is someone who experiences sexual attraction towards the same gender. A homoromantic person is someone who experiences romantic attraction towards the same gender. Then biromantic is someone who experiences is a biromantic. A biromantic person who is asexual experiences no sexual attraction. So if they're a pure asexual, but they experience romantic attraction to two genders. So a biromantic person is someone who experiences romantic attraction towards two genders. And a bisexual person is someone who experiences sexual attraction towards two genders. You can have a biromantic bisexual, or you can have a biromantic asexual person. So a biromantic asexual person experiences romantic attraction towards two genders, but no sexual attraction. Or if they're grey asexual, they don't experience the usual sexual attraction. They lack sexual attraction. That absence of the usual sexual attraction. If they're a biromantic sexual, then they experience romantic attraction towards two genders, but they could be a biromantic person, but they could be homosexual. So you can get people that are romantically attracted to two genders, but sexually attracted to one. Usually those people wouldn't identify as asexual because they're still sexually attracted to someone, just that they have romantic attraction for more than one gender. And you can have someone who's panromantic who can experience attraction for multiple genders, such as male, female, transgender, gender fluid, agender, demi-boy, demi-girl. So they are not restricted by any gender, but they can have a preference for a particular gender. So I had someone come and make a comment on my channel that was completely wrong when they said, oh, so a pan-romantic person can experience attraction to any made-up gender. Is that right? And well, they didn't even ask me if it's right. And exclusive, excluding, I'm assuming, male and female. Well, that's where you're completely wrong. A pan-romantic can experience romantic attraction for any gender. Usually it includes, that is inclusive of male and female, and often a panromantic will experience attraction towards a male or a female as well as other genders. I know someone who's panromantic. They can have romantic attraction for females, for transgenders, for gender fluid, for agender. And they do have attraction for guys. As it happens, they're sexually attracted to guys. They're not as romantically attracted to guys. So it's totally wrong when someone says, oh, a panromantic person is attracted to made-up genders. First of all, if someone identifies as a gender, it's real because they are living that gender. So making a flippant, dismissive comment about made-up genders is very rude and dismissive of someone's identity and feelings. We should not be dismissing someone's feelings and someone's identity. If someone is that gender, they are living that gender. That's the reality of this world. Whether you like it or not, people identify as agender, people identify as gender fluid, people identify as male, female, people identify as different types of genders these days. That's the reality of the situation because we are living in times in the 21st century. Well, that's a reality. People have been different genders for years, but they haven't been able to come out about it because society is hell-bent on pegging people down to be a specific gender that they are comfortable with. But at the end of the day, people need to be who they are, their true, authentic selves, and have pride in who they are. If you're putting someone down, dismissing someone's feelings or dismissing someone's gender, that's your problem for being uncomfortable with that. It's not their problem at the end of the day. They can identify how they like, and we should respect that. And so if someone's biromantic, it definitely includes male or female. Both of them, often. And often I find with panromantics, they have, or biromantics, they tend to have a preference for one gender more than the other. The people I come across, the guys I come across, for example, who are biromantic, attracted to two genders, they usually always have a preference for males. And as I identify as female, then they're not suitable for me. So just because someone's biromantic or panromantic doesn't mean to say they don't actually have a preference for a particular gender. Some don't. Some panromantics are just interested in the person's personality, the characteristic traits, things they have in common, and their actual appearance of what gender they are doesn't matter to them. So every panromantic person is different, but I want to quash the fact that I'm gonna have to put my charger on. I've just realized I've been on a training, so we need to accept that different people are different genders and be okay with people being who they are. So asexuality It's a sexual orientation. It's not a disorder. So I had someone come on the other day on my channel, comments, loads of comments, which I've just blocked this person now because they came onto my channel making out that they were asexual, right? Which I suspected might have not been the case. But I didn't say that because, you know, if someone identifies as on the asexual spectrum, they identify as that, right? I have to take their word for it. But as the conversation went on in the comments, which you can't see anymore because they're hidden because this person's a hidden user now on my channel, then basically I gathered the way they were talking that I didn't think they were asexual, and then they basically proved they weren't. Because they were turning around in comments to me saying, "Oh, you're like me because you're older now. You've like lost all attraction." And I'm like, that's completely untrue. I was born asexual, but didn't realize it. And that is the same for a lot of asexuals. I have high arousal levels. There is absolutely nothing wrong with my arousal levels whatsoever, right? I just don't have any sexual attraction. Arousal is a feeling in your genitalia, which can be linked to someone or something, or it can just be in and of itself. So my arousal is for kissing. When I think about kissing, I get aroused. And for me, that's just a normal bodily function that I've come to terms with and that I understand about myself. But I have zero sexual attraction. I can be kissing a guy for a lot of hours with barely any break, right? Go to the toilet, yeah, that's a break, right? But I still don't want sex because I don't get the need, urge, or want for it. So I've been in situations with guys where, as a hyper romantic, I have been kissing them for hours with nearly no break apart from probably going to the toilet and maybe having a bit of food. But usually it's like going to the toilet most of the time, you know, the food for energy for kissing sometimes, right? Like a snack. And you know, this can be hours. Like once I was kissing a guy in a club nearly non-stop for 4 hours. Well, it wasn't all in the club. It was like 2 hours, 2 hours in the club and like 2 hours out of it, I think, something like that. Right. And I think I went to the toilet in that time. I don't even think I ate in that time. And so this guy, when I had this particular time in the club with this guy, he was asking me at the end of the night, like, why, you know, he didn't understand why I was resisting doing more stuff than just kissing. Like he said, how are you holding yourself back? How are you stopping those feelings, those urges? And I said, I don't have those urges in the first place. I told him I am asexual, which he didn't believe. And I said, I just don't have those urges in the first place. I don't get the need, urge, or want for partner sexual intercourse. This is what it means to completely lack sexual attraction. If you're a pure asexual, your absence of sexual attraction, you don't get the need, urge, or want for partner sexual intercourse. You don't get that innate need or desire. An innate need or desire is like the urge, the feeling, I need to have sex. I see someone, I want sex, I need it. It's like an impulsive thing. I don't get any of that. I don't get the urge for it. Kissing is my thing, not sex. And so I don't feel that way. So this is what asexuality actually is. For pure asexuals, that we don't experience this. There are grey asexuals, which are on the more sexual end of the asexual spectrum. So if you've got pure asexuals, as I spoke about, don't experience any sexual attraction, then you go into grey asexuals. And the grey asexuals can have different intensities of feelings. You've got the ones that are grey asexual, that experience sexual attraction, but not enough to want to act on it. Therefore, the sexual attraction is not very strong, right? But then you've got the other type of grey asexuals who do experience sexual attraction, but only under limited, rare, or specific circumstances, right? So, for example, demisexual falls under the grey asexual part of the asexuality spectrum. And a demisexual can only experience sexual attraction when a deep emotional bond has been formed. This is not the same as wanting an emotional bond before you have sex. A demisexual cannot experience sexual attraction unless a deep emotional bond has been formed. It's not a choice for them. They're not choosing to wait to have an emotional bond first. They don't experience sexual attraction until they've got that emotional bond. And usually it needs to be maintained as the same both ways for it to stay activated, if you like. So a demisexual can be like completely asexual, not experience any sexual attraction whatsoever until they form a deep emotional bond with a person. It could be just a handful of people in their lifetime, like 5 people or even less than that for some demisexuals. But every demisexual person's different. So you have to ask an asexual person, like, what does a lack of sexual attraction mean to them? Are they pure asexual? Are they grey asexual? Especially if you're looking to get into a relationship with them. But even if you're just looking to form a friendship, it's a good idea to know where you stand, because a demisexual person could end up being sexually attracted to you if they form a deep emotional bond as a friend with you, for example. You get very, very close. So the grey end of the asexual spectrum is the more sexual end of the spectrum. And when a demisexual, for example, has that deep emotional bond, for some demisexuals, they're still not that bothered about sex, but for other demisexuals, they really want it and need it. And they can't then go without it because they've experienced that sexual attraction like the normal person would, rather than how they were before when they didn't experience any sexual attraction. So asexuality is very nuanced. No two asexuals are identical. But what asexuality isn't, it isn't a disorder. It's not the same as having, for example, there's a condition where you can be aroused in a state of like perpetual arousal and you can't get out of it. You can have a disorder where something hormonal isn't working and it's making you not want sex. You could be impotent, for example. That's not the same as having asexuality as a sexual orientation. That's a medical issue, right? But asexuality isn't a disorder. And so I need to move my foot. So someone the other day, this person who came on my channel was talking in chat about, in comments, about being asexual. And then I discovered they weren't, because they were saying about, oh, you're like me, it's an age thing. You're not sex, you've lost all attraction. I haven't lost all attraction at all. I have multiple attractions, so I don't experience sexual attraction. And age has got absolutely nothing to do with it. I can see now at 6 years old, I was asexual when I had my first heterosexual boyfriend. And he wanted to do sexual touching that I didn't want to do. Right? It's obvious that I was asexual back then. I loved kissing him passionately at 6 years old. That was my first heterosexual boyfriend, right? It's very young. Right? But I didn't want to do that. I wasn't interested in that. I wasn't interested in the sexual side of the connection with him. I was only interested in kissing and romance and feeling loved and special. That's all I was interested in. So it's obvious that I was asexual and didn't realize it. I had a boyfriend that was very short-lived. He was a friend and I worked for his mum for a while as well. And I got into a relationship with him really quickly. Then I realised we were only suitable to be friends, because when I kissed him, it just didn't feel right. This is going back to when I was 15, 16, in birth certificate age. And, and this guy, I ended up being friends with him in the future, but he wasn't a good guy. He was ended up being a womanizer. However, in adulthood, I know him, and he's changed completely now. He's got a wife and kids, and he's actually a police officer, and he's completely turned his life around. But with him doing his police work, he came into one of my jobs when I worked at my old jobs. I don't work for an employer anymore. And he said in front of people in the office, I was talking about, I found out I'm asexual. And he said, well, I've always known that, Sandra. I knew that when I asked you, basically, you knew that when he was with me years ago. And I'm thinking, well, why didn't you tell me? Because he knew that I wasn't interested in sex, because he asked me to go away for the weekend with him. And I was like completely like thinking like, I don't want to, because I know what you'll probably want to do. So I said no. And even when I was in college, I had a friend from Asia, actually. That's how I got to like Asian guys, I think. And he was an Asian guy. And so, yeah, he once invited me to his flat. And I was good friends with the guy. He used to bring me gifts back from his country when he went on holiday there. He was studying the same course as me at college, one of the same courses. And he invited me to his flat, but I said no because I thought he's going to want sex with me and I really don't want that. And this was when I was like 19 and bursted of a cage. So it's obvious that throughout my life, I've always been asexual, but I didn't realize it. So I'm an asexual that has had sex in the past. So there's a lot of stereotypes where people think all asexuals have not had sex, all asexuals have had bad sex, all asexuals have had trauma, asexuals have a disorder, all these type of really bad stereotypes that are very damaging, right? Some asexuals have had sexual trauma and some haven't. That, asexuality is not the same as having sexual trauma, right? People who are not asexual have sexual trauma. It doesn't stop them being the sexuality they are, usually, right? I'm not saying there are not completely any exceptions to this, because I have come across a very few people who do identify as asexual because of things that have happened in their life. And they just don't experience any sexual attraction. Right? And I'm not here to judge those people. I'm not here to tell them not to identify as asexual or to identify as asexual. People are their own person, right? But I'm saying asexuality is not the same as having something happen to you that's caused you to not want sex or not to like it. But if you're a person who's lost all sexual attraction for a prolonged period of time, then there are people who have been in that situation who do identify as asexual. But asexuality isn't the same as having a disorder or a disability that stops you from having sex. It's not the same as being impotent. And it's not the same, asexuality is not even the same as celibacy. So celibacy is a choice. People who are celibate, they choose to refrain from having sex for things like religious reasons, or because they think it's better for them to resist the sexual urges. It's better for their mind or their sexual energy they can use to convert to other types of energy for things. Some people purposely stop watching porn, stop masturbating, and they become celibate because they think it's a better life for their mental health, for their spiritual health, for their sexual health, for their sexual energy. They feel they can put that sexual energy elsewhere. But that is not the same as being asexual. There are some people that say, oh, I haven't had sex for a year, I'm asexual. That's not the same. So what, you haven't had sex for a year? Some people haven't had sex for 5 years. That doesn't make them asexual. Asexuality is when you don't get that need, urge, or want for partnered sexual intercourse. It's when you don't look at someone and think, I want sex with you. That's what asexuality is. That's where it stems from. That's what it's based on. Like I said, there are grey asexuals. These are not pure asexuals. But the grey asexuals, they don't experience sexual attraction in the usual way. So they lack the full sexual attraction in the usual way. So asexuality is based on a lack of sexual attraction. And sexual attraction is the innate need, desire, or want for partnered sexual intercourse. This is a feeling within you. So this is not the same as an asexual person having sex because they love their partner and they want to do that because they love them rather than the sex itself. So you'll get some asexuals that are sex positive that do have sex. For example, if they're in a relationship with a heterosexual. But it's usually not because they need it. It's because they're willing to have it with that person because they love the person and they want to experience that intimacy and closeness with the person in that way. So a lack of sexual attraction is not necessarily a lack of sexual action. However, the full definition of asexuality, according to Wikipedia, or was when I last looked, it might have changed, is asexuality is a lack of sexual attraction and or little to no interest in sexual activity. So it's the and or all that's really important. So you get some asexuals that hate all sexual activity. They're not interested in penetrative sex. They're not interested in masturbation. They're not interested in touching each other's naked bodies. They're not interested in doing any type of sex whatsoever, oral sex, anal sex, or anything like that. But then you could get the other asexuals that don't experience any sexual attraction, for example, that don't mind some touching, maybe a bit of masturbation. And then you can get some asexuals that don't mind partaking in sexual activities. So you can have sex repulsed asexuals, you can have sex neutral asexuals, or sex positive asexuals. I'm sex repulsed for myself, but if other people want it, like it, need it, it's consensual and they enjoy it, I'm fine with it. But for me these days, I'm not into it, right? It's I'd rather have the kissing, and the idea of it in general repulses me. And I don't like being touched on my top half or down below. I just, don't like that personally. So I like less touching than I was having years ago. And I found out I'm asexual in 2014, and it was 2011 the last time I had sex. And we're now in 2024. So that's like 13, well, it'll be 13 years this October since I last had sex. Right? So a lack of sexual attraction is not necessarily a lack of sexual action. You can have some people who behave in a sexy way, but they're still asexual. I have some sexual behavior with the way I like to kiss, but I experience zero sexual attraction. So asexuality is not some sort of disorder. There was a guy the other day, the guy who first of all made out he was asexual and then said, oh, it's a lack of attraction because of age. And was trying to say that's the same thing, which is completely untrue, because I experience multiple attractions, just not sexual attraction. I have high arousal levels. There's nothing wrong with my arousal levels whatsoever, right? So I can experience romantic attraction, aesthetic attraction, emotional attraction, spiritual attraction, clothes attraction, and I experience creative attraction, intelligence attraction, and I could go on, right? But there's about 8. I did a video saying 8 asexual attractions. I don't actually experience any platonic attraction whatsoever. So a number of asexuals, the majority, if not all of asexuals, but not me, so the majority of asexuals do experience platonic attraction. I don't experience that whatsoever. So I skip the feeling of, oh, I've just met you, it'd be nice to get to know you, I feel friendship or acquaintanceship for you now, if that's even a word. It jumps from that straight away to having attraction for the person and misses all that bit out, which makes life very difficult. Like, I get on better with guys in general. I prefer to have guy friends, but then it's hard for me because I get attracted to them often. Usually, usually I'm attracted to my guy friends if I have guy friends. I tend to like mostly keep myself to myself these days. I got one best friend. But yeah, most of the people I know are online. So I do meet guys in person though. So I think you have to really understand asexual on a fundamental deep level to you. And in the end, this guy goes, oh, I think asexuality is a personality disorder. If he was saying he was asexual on the asexual spectrum, then calling it a personality disorder, that must mean he thinks he's got a personality disorder, which I would say is more right and correct than other people being that way for him thinking that. You know what I mean? It's not a personality disorder. Doesn't mean to say that some asexuals, people who identify asexual, don't have personality disorders. There are some people who are asexual that have personality disorders, just like people who are heterosexual. A lot of heterosexuals that have personality disorders. Personality disorder is not to do with sexuality, it's to do with personality, right? So asexuality is not the same as gender. Gender is like male, female, trans, non-binary, gender fluid, agender, demi boy, demi girl. It's the gender they are, the sex they are, right? But some people confuse gender with sexuality. Asexuality has got nothing to do with gender, as in the sense people can be any gender and be asexual. Asexuality is to do with sexuality, and it's a sexual orientation that's based on a lack of sexual attraction. So some asexuals can experience arousal and do, others don't. Some asexuals do watch porn, others don't. Some asexuals do masturbate, others don't. Some asexuals have kinks and fetishes, and others don't. Some asexuals like to have fantasies, and I personally don't have sexual fantasies. So just because someone's asexual doesn't mean to say they don't do anything sexual, but for a proportion of asexuals, they don't want to do sexual stuff. They're not interested in that. They're interested in like a more companionship type of relationship, especially if they don't experience any romantic attraction. But if they experience romantic attraction, they can want things like kissing and cuddling. Some want some touching, sensual attraction is the other thing I experience, especially with guys' upper body. So sensual attraction for me is I do like touching the guy's hair and the face. I do like touching his shoulders and stuff like that. So sensual attraction can often be confused with sexual attraction. Sexual attraction, like I said, is the innate need, urge, or want for partnered sexual intercourse, which is what asexuals tend to lack, or lack to the full extent. But sensual attraction is a need and desire to touch, and it doesn't have to be born from an ideology or feeling of it being sexual. It can just be they like to stroke, they like to feel. It's very, it's a sense experience for them. So people, for example, who are heterosexual might confuse sensual attraction for sexual attraction, because often people who are sexually attracted want sensual touching as well as part of that sexual attraction. They associate them both together. So heterosexuals often associate romantic attraction, sexual attraction, sensual attraction. They normally associate it all together as one bundle of sexual attraction. But actually, attractions are separate, and people can just put them together. But you can have multiple different types of attractions for different people. And you can have just one attraction for some others and no attraction for some. So instead of like just thinking sexual attraction is the thing, and that includes romance and kissing and sex and, sensual touching, and some people want emotional connection, some avoidance, they don't. And that's kind of all clumped together. That's most of how society views sexual attraction. We need to get society to understand there are multiple different types of attractions that are all separate and don't have to be put together, but often they are, or some of them are for people. But once people start to understand that attractions can be variable and varied, and you can have different types, then you can begin to understand how asexuality is a real thing. Because we're separating different types of attractions. Whereas if people just clump everything under sexual attraction, then it's hard for people to fathom out in their head anyone not being that way. So when we can understand that attraction is a huge topic with multiple different facets and nuances, then we can begin to understand how people feel differently in different situations about different people. Some people, for example, are sapiosexual. They can only experience sexual attraction through an intellectual connection. Now, what may be intelligent to one person may not be intelligent to another. For me personally, I love being around coders. If a person can code a website, wow, I find it amazing. But I only get romantic attraction for guys, not for females. So if a guy is talking about website coding and I'm feeling romantic towards him, then I would be like more inclined to be interested in him for a potential relationship if I'm single, which I am. And, if I've got aesthetic attraction as well going on, so I like his look, I'm attracted to his look, then I would, he would be more like in my, oh, I'm attracted to you bucket, if you like. So some people can just find someone aesthetically pleasing, but they're not aesthetically attracted. It's not like, oh, I'm really drawn to you because your aesthetics. I'm finding like a compulsion to go towards you. Some people have the aesthetic attraction, which is like that compulsion to go towards someone, like you really are super attracted to them aesthetically. So in their face, for example. But other people can just appreciate a person's facial features, like a beautiful painting, but they would never want to kind of like be drawn and act on that attraction, if you know what I mean. They wouldn't experience full aesthetic attraction, like, oh, that person's so attractive, I just got to be close to them, like stroking their face or kissing them and stuff like this. So attraction is a huge topic that's very diverse. I just feel that not enough people talk about in society or in movies or talk shows or anything really. It's not really that talked about. And before I know I'm asexual, I just used to think I was heterosexual for years of my life. And I thought sex was a normal part of a relationship that I was expected to do, which is why I mostly did it. You know, like I did love the person I was with at the time, but I would have rather done the washing up, and I hate washing up. So, what are some of the signs that you might be asexual if you don't already know? Well, if you look at your childhood and you look at your teen years, maybe you're still a teenager yourself, the types of questions I would ask you is, how are you feeling about the people around you? Like, are you looking at anyone and thinking, oh, I wish I could have sex with that person? Right? Because if you're thinking that way, then you're likely not asexual. But if you are hearing different people talk about sexual acts, talk about sex, talk about the person being really hot, talk about who slept with who last night, but you're kind of like switched off or tuned out or confused, or you just don't understand what the big deal is, then it's a high possibility you might be asexual. If you're looking at someone and thinking, oh, wow, he's so gorgeous and I just want his body and want sex with him now, you wouldn't be asexual, right? But if I say you wouldn't be asexual, obviously there's caveats to that in case you are on the grey asexual part of the asexual spectrum. There can be limited, rare, or specific circumstances where once in a blue moon you might think someone is that, you know, feel that way. But in general, asexuals don't do that. They don't look at someone and think, I want sex with you. So if you're going around thinking, I really want sex with that person, like I want to jump their bones, you wouldn't be asexual. Like, I'm saying that as a blanket statement, right? If you are feeling really close to someone and you feel emotionally connected to them, you feel romantically connected to them, you think about kissing and cuddling them, but you're confused because you don't want sex and you haven't really looked at anyone before in a sexual manner or thought about having sex, it's a good possibility you could be asexual. Because if I look back at my teen years, for example, I wasn't thinking about having sex with any boyfriend I had. I was thinking about romance. I was thinking about kissing. I was thinking about cuddling. I was thinking about all those things. And when I, for example, had a boyfriend at 15, I was completely oblivious to thinking about sex between me and him. And so when he showed me a condom, for example, I didn't associate it with anything to do with me. I just said, that's nice, because I thought it was a nice object, right? I didn't think about having sex with him. It never entered my head. I didn't go around my school years thinking about sex. It just wasn't something I was interested in or into. I used to hear like the boys at school saying, oh, finger of fudge, which I really didn't know what that meant. I knew it meant something sexual, but I don't even think I ever understood what that meant. And so I'm like, oh, that's some sexual stuff they're talking about. But I wasn't interested in it, right? And so clearly I was asexual back then, but I just didn't know it. I've like I said, I've had situations where I had someone invite me to their flat, but I automatically thought, "Oh, they're gonna want me to have sex with them." This is when I was at college, when I was aware of sex. Actually, I did have I had sex when I was 16, so I knew about that then. But you know what I mean? But so when the guy invited me back to his flat as a friend, I didn't know whether he'd want sex with me or not, but I had a feeling he would, and I didn't want to be alone with him in case that happened. Whereas someone who is sexually inclined, someone who likes sex, enjoys it, would be more likely thinking, maybe I would like to have sex with that person. Maybe if I went to his flat, things could happen between us. Maybe maybe in the future we could be together in a sexual way. So maybe it could be good for me to go over there and explore what he actually wants, because they wouldn't really be worried about it as much, because I was friends with him for quite some time before he asked me that. I don't know if it was half a year or something, I don't know. But I'd known him quite a while, so there wasn't a complete reason for me to be totally suspicious of that. But because I was like, definitely, there's no way I want sex. Then as soon as he invited me back, I'm like, no, like, you're all right, basically. And when I was like with that guy who I said's now a police officer, um, he invited me away for a weekend. I knew he'd want sex, and immediately I was like, no, there's no way I'd want that. So I have got an instant, even looking back throughout my teen years, I had an instant like reaction, aversion to, like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to go there. I don't want to put myself in that position because I don't want sex. When I moved in with my first boyfriend into Exeter, and it was a long-term relationship, but when I moved in there, after I left, in the place where I was, there I had like a studio flat with the guy I was in a relationship with at the time. And there was a guy who lived right downstairs, but he actually wasn't good to his girlfriend while I was there. So it made no sense why later on I kind of ended up being acquainted with them and sort of being friends with them, but not friends with them. It's really weird. Looking back on it now, I'm thinking, what the hell are you doing with that guy, Sandra? But anyway, later on, this guy moved out. I moved out, and then I ended up seeing him when I was out dancing, and I ended up going back to his place, and he cooked me some food, and then he was on about me going in the other room with him, and I'm like, no, I'm not interested in that. And afterwards, he was like, oh, if it was any other girl, then they'd be in, they or he would be interested in having sex with them, but he knows I'm not like that. But if it had been any other girl, that's what he'd basically be doing with her. And so clearly I was asexual. So if any of these things resonate with you, then it's likely you're asexual too, or could be on the asexual spectrum. Yeah. So I'm saying these things to you in order for you to see if there's any way that you relate to any of these things I'm saying. If you could see looking back that you were always asexual but didn't realize it, or if you're going through any of these things right now, if your friends are talking about sexual stuff and, maybe you can stand a bit of it, but after a while, it just gets so uncomfortable. Or maybe they're just making you feel uncomfortable as it is. And you're just like thinking, I really want to change the subject. I don't want to be here. I've had enough. This is too much. This is making me feel sick. Then it's like you're on the asexual spectrum and maybe even a pure asexual, right? Because, sometimes I can be okay with some people talking about sex to a certain extent. And then after a while, I just start feeling sick, as it becomes too much. If I'm talking about sex as an educational thing on here, then I'm okay with that usually. But if I'm actually talking to a heterosexual, for example, guy, and he starts talking about sex and being sexual with me, and starts like implying he really wants sex with me, or starts saying like, what would you do sexually with me and stuff like this, start sex talk, it just really turns me off him. And it just makes me feel uncomfortable. It's like I'm thinking, God, if is that all your mind is on? Do you know what I mean? And it just puts me off the guy. At the moment, I'm not interested in being in a relationship with any guy. I'm glad to be single. But you know what I mean? It's like if heterosexual guys talk to me about sex, then it's really repulsive, or can get really repulsive. But if I talk about sex on this channel in an educational way, it doesn't usually repulse me anymore, the majority of the time. So it's like I'm talking to an asexual audience, I'm fine, but if I'm talking with heterosexual and he's interested in having sex with me, it just gets too icky for me, too yucky. So maybe you feel that way. Maybe you're all right, like having sex education, for example, if you've got sex education at uni or wherever you are, or maybe you're okay about reading about it in a book, like in a practical context way. But then at other times, if someone's actually involving you in their sex life or implying they want sex with you, it just totally turns you off. You're likely asexual, or at least on the asexual spectrum. Because in general, asexuals do not think the same as the rest of the sexual world population. We look at things differently. That's why sometimes some asexuals either don't feel they fit into the LGBT plus community, or some of the LGBT plus community don't feel that asexuals should be in there. This is because asexuality is based on a lack of sexual attraction. Lesbian, gays, and bisexuals still experience sexual attraction. They just experience it in a different way. So asexuals are very opposite a lot of the time to gays, lesbians, and bisexuals in terms of our sexuality. The reason we're in the acronym is because we're a sexual minority like they are. But we are still very different because they do experience sexual attraction. Lesbians can be super sexual, bisexuals can as well. I went to speak at the UK Asexuality conference in London in 2018, and I saw some of Pride at that time, but I didn't see all of it. I only saw a bit of it because I went to eat food at a restaurant with the guy who was my cameraman at the time, and I met up with the person who was my friend at the time with my cameraman. But when the Pride event was over, the people came in the same restaurant, and there was a woman standing on top of the table, stood on top of the table, I should say, pulled open her top and or lifted her top up, and her boobs were hanging out, and she was swinging her boobs around, you know? I was disgusted. Like, to me, that's highly sexual, and it's highly inappropriate when you're trying to eat your food. If a heterosexual person did that, they'd probably be arrested for flashing, right? But because it's someone on the LGBT plus community spectrum, they got away with it. It should be equality for all if we want equality, right? And I don't want to see that. I'm nudity repulsed for a start, but I just think it's highly inappropriate. You know, I don't want to see some woman's boobs being flashed when I'm trying to eat my food, and that's not what I came in the restaurant for. And some pride events can be very, very sexual, very sexual. I did go to Exeter Pride for the first time this year. I found it wasn't too sexual, so that was a really good thing for me. I found it was very welcoming and it was good. So I got, I felt welcome there. I felt like I fitted in terms of my asexuality, and like celebrating with them, and I felt good. But I know still lesbians, gays, bisexuals can be very sexual people. So some asexuals do get turned off by that. Some asexuals really love being part of the LGBT plus community. Some asexuals feel left out of it and they don't want to be. From my perspective, I don't need validation by the LGBT plus community to be happy being asexual. So whether they accept me or they don't accept me, I'm okay either way. It doesn't make any difference to me. And especially because my mission is to get asexuality recognized as a sexual orientation in its own right throughout the globe. So no asexual has to live in fear of ridicule ever again. So although we are part of the LGBT plus acronym, I believe we still need to get asexuality recognized separately to that, because I get accused of being a lesbian a lot because I don't want sex with guys, and they automatically think that's weird, that's not normal, that's freaky. So it must mean that you're actually a lesbian and you fancy women, you're attracted to women, you want sex with women. And it's completely untrue. I don't. And so for me, that's insulting for me. It's not insulting in the sense that I have lesbian friends, I have gay friends. I have no problem with lesbians, gays, bisexuals, pansexuals. But it's insulting to me when persons like basically saying, I can't not want sex and be a hetero person. I can't not want sex and still be attracted to guys. It's insulting to me because it's basically dismissing who I am. I'm not attracted to women. I'm attracted to guys. And so people in the world need an awareness of what asexual is in and of its own right. Otherwise, they can also think guys are gay because they're not sexually attracted to women because they don't want sex with women. And so it can be damaging for some guys as well to get constantly accused of, oh, you're gay if you don't want sex with women. When a guy might know he doesn't want sex with a woman because he doesn't experience sexual attraction, but he doesn't know asexuality is a thing. So the more we can understand asexuality on a fundamental, deep level and the reality of it and stop stereotyping things, then the happier we can live in the world amongst sexuals. Asexuals are different to sexuals. Our sexuality is based on a lack of sexual attraction. And that's the important thing to remember. It's not the same as abstaining, it's just a choice. Asexuality isn't choice. Asexuality isn't like a red letter day experience either. I get guys in the past who I was talking to on dating sites wanting an asexual experience with me. A number of them. It's like they want to try it. It's like it's a novelty for them. Like, let me try sexuality on. How can I make myself asexual? Well, you can't. Because your sexuality is your sexuality. You can't make or force yourself to be something you're not. Oh, well, how, and then it's like, oh, I want the asexual experience. It's like, I'm not a red letter day. I'm not some toy you can pick up and put down when you damn well feel like it. I'm not something to be played with. I'm not a heart and emotion to be played with. And sometimes people think asexuals or some asexuals are emotionless or heartless because we don't want sex. But asexuals and asexuality, usually the way we love is for a deep emotional connection. A deep emotional connection. So therefore, we are very capable of love in an emotional connection way, in a very deep way. The deepest love is through an emotional connection, even with people who aren't asexual. The more people experience an emotional connection, emotional bond, and have really good communication skills with each other, work as a team, and are compatible, the more likely their relationship is going to be successful. For the people who are avoiding their emotions, if you've got two avoidants in a relationship, it's not going to make for a great relationship, but they could probably get by because they're both avoiding, if they're both avoiding the same sort of stuff. But that's not healthy. But the healthy relationships are based on having a deep emotional connection through open communication and understanding it and being seen by the other person. And forming a deep emotional connection is when you open up to the other person. You admit you're sorry. You grow together as a team as well as individual people. You want to care for that person. You want to protect their heart. You want to be kind and caring and loving towards them. This is what a relationship is based on. A healthy relationship. You can't have a healthy relationship without sex. This notion that you can't have a healthy relationship without sex is nonsense. Some people don't want, like, or need sex. And a relationship is not healthy if someone is forcing themselves to do something they don't want to do to please the other person. If someone doesn't like, want, or need sex, they shouldn't be forcing themselves to do that to please the other person. That's not love. People have sex with people with no emotional connection. That's not love. They're just having the sex. So where people get the idea that love and sex always have to go together and you can't have love without sex, it's just completely ludicrous. People have one-night stands. People go clubbing, get drunk, go and have sex with people they may not even be that attracted to because they desire the sex. So sexual attraction is when you are attracted to a specific person or people, and you get an innate need, urge, or want, desire for partnered sexual intercourse. Sexual desire is a desire for sex in and of itself, regardless of whether you're sexually attracted to that person or not. You want the sex, you're desiring the sex. An arousal is a feeling in your genitalia that may or may not be linked to a person and may or may not be linked to a want to have sex. These are all different things. So a person who, for example, who goes clubbing can see someone and be hugely sexually attracted to them, then desire sex with them. Or they could go clubbing and in their mind they want to have sex when they haven't even seen anyone yet, because they desire the sex in and of itself. It's like, oh, tonight I'm going to get laid, meaning I'm just going to have sex. It doesn't really matter who with, they're determined to go through with that. You know, that's not love. People need to stop coupling love with sex. You can have the most wonderful sex, if you like, with someone, but if you like sex, if you want it and need it, but that person could be a horrible person. They could be unkind, inconsiderate, disrespectful, unloving, but you still got great sex, right? But that doesn't make a healthy relationship. That doesn't make love. That is not love. So people need to stop confusing love with sex and stop thinking that in order to have love, you have to have sex, because that's completely not true. People can have sex without love at all. So people can love without sex. Think of all the times that people around the world, no matter what sexuality they are, when they don't have sex, but they're still in a loving relationship with their partner, they still love their partner. Some people are away for like a month for their work, for example. They're away for a week for their work, or they're going abroad with their mates for a month, or their family's in a different country, so they go and see their family. And they're in a relationship, right? And they're not seeing their partner for a month. Does that stop them loving their partner just because they're not with them for a month? Because they're not having sex with their partner, does that mean to say they don't love their partner anymore? Does that mean to say they're not in a relationship anymore? No. So this idea and concept that you're not in a relationship if you're not having sex is a load of rubbish. The only people who should be defining what a relationship is are the people in it, no one else. You can have the most wonderful, loving, caring, kind, committed relationship without sex. And it really annoys me and infuriates me when I see people say, oh, a relationship without sex is just a friendship. Really? Is that what you truly think? Because you're so far off the mark. I do not kiss my friends. I do not cuddle my friends. I do not sit on my friend's lap. I don't go around holding their hand. I don't stroke their hair. I don't do any of this stuff. But in a romantic relationship, I would. So I don't do any of that stuff. In a romantic relationship, often I will be more emotionally intimate with the person. I'm more physically intimate, even though I don't have sex and I don't like touching in certain places. But I would never do that with a friend because there's boundaries there. I have different rules for friendship to what I do for a romantic relationship, although some obviously overlap. You know, and some asexuals don't experience any romantic attraction, but it doesn't mean to say they still can't be in a loving relationship. You can still have a relationship without sex and without romantic attraction and still love the person, because romance isn't the same as love either. If you're not romantic in nature, you don't feel a romantic attraction. Does that mean to say you can't love someone? Of course not. You can love lots of people, because love isn't the same as romance. Romance isn't the same as sex. Love isn't the same as romance. Love isn't the same as sex. You can love someone without being romantically attracted to them. You can love someone without being sexually attracted to them. Love is about emotional connection. It's about the way the person makes you feel when you're with them and vice versa. Love is a team effort to say we've got something special here. Love is the gestures you make towards the other person. Love is the caringness that you show the other person. Love is the kindness you show the other person, and they should be showing to you. Love is a two-way street, but you can also love someone who doesn't love you back as well. Just think of how many times people fall in love with someone and they don't tell them for months or years. Does that mean to say that they don't love them if they're not having sex with that person, they've kept their love secret? Of course it doesn't. Therefore, love definitely exists without sex. Someone can love someone for years and years and never even be in a relationship with that person. They could just look at them from afar, maybe on a YouTube channel, and think, I really love that person. Is it true love if they don't know them? Only the person can know, right? But my point is, you can love someone or have feelings for someone without sex. And you can love someone without having sexual attraction. You can love someone without having romantic attraction. And like I said, you can get aromantic asexuals or aromantic sexuals. Aromantic asexuals lack sexual attraction as well as lack romantic attraction. Aromantic sexuals lack romantic attraction but still have sexual attraction. So aromanticism isn't unique to asexuals. You have aromantics on both the asexual or sexual spectrums. So if you feel different, if you feel differently towards sex, if you think sex is meh, if you feel sick about sex, if sex is just something that's not really interesting to you, if you'd rather be doing other things, then you're likely to be asexual on the asexual spectrum. There can be some people that don't realize they're on the grey asexual part of the asexual spectrum. I think this is harder for people to realize because some people can experience really strong, for example, sexual attraction to one person for a prolonged period of time, say for 3 years. And maybe they get into a relationship with that person, and then that relationship ends. And then after that, they feel weird because it's like, I don't feel I want sex with anyone else. And you could argue that maybe it's just because they haven't got over that person yet. Maybe they still are hankering after that person. But often someone who experiences sexual attraction will get sexually attracted to other people, even if they don't really want it or think about it, right? So you have to be then asking yourself, like, if you have had, for example, one relationship in your life and you've been really sexually attracted to a person, got into a relationship, but after that, you haven't experienced sexual attraction after that for like a number of years, for example, afterwards, or you just don't feel that way and look at anyone else that way, then you could be on the grey asexual part of the asexual spectrum, where that was the one instance that you did experience sexual attraction, but in general, you don't. So think about your own life, think about your relationships, think about how much you think about having sex with other people, how often that is. Think about, like, do you think, oh, I really want sex with that person or those people? How frequently you're experiencing that, in your mind? But if it's a case of like you've just like felt that way with one person in your life so far, you could be on the grey sexual part of the spectrum. Because like I said, grey sexuals only experience sexual attraction in limited, rare, specific circumstances, or they experience it but not enough to want to act on it. So do aromantic asexuals, those that lack romantic attraction, ever have relationships? Yes. Some of them have relationships with sexuals, with heterosexuals. Some of them have relationships with other asexuals. Some aromantic asexuals have relationships with other aromantic asexuals, right? And some aromantics have something called a queer platonic relationship, which is more than a friendship. It's deeper than that, but it's not romantic in nature. It's more like a really deep best friendship where there's a high love and affection for the person, as far as I understand, because I'm not aromantic myself, but they don't experience the romantic attraction. Does this mean to say that people who lack romantic attraction can never act in romantic ways? No, it doesn't. I've known aromantics who, to my mind, because I'm a romantic, do things that is romantic, but in their mind, it's not. Similarly, some asexuals, for example, myself, can have some sexual behavior, but I still have zero sexual attraction because action is not the same as attraction. So therefore, you could have some aromantics, people who lack romantic attraction, doing things, so having actions that are actually romantic to a romantic person, but to them they're not. What do I mean by this? So, for example, you might get an aromantic person who's going out to dinner with a romantic person. An aromantic person can be, this is cool, I'm hanging out with a mate. This is great. I feel great. I'm having a good chat to them. I'm really liking this platonic connection. This feels good. The romantic can be thinking, oh my gosh, we're having a meal out together. This is so romantic. They might be listening to the music playing in the background. They might be looking at the scenery. They might be just feeling magical in that moment, feeling like, oh, I really wish I could cuddle the person now, hold their hand, and I feel really romantic towards this person. So two people who have different types of attraction or different types of no attraction can be experiencing different things whilst having a shared experience. So a romantic and aromantic person can have a shared experience together, but both experience that experience differently. Does that make sense? So, like I said, with the meal out, the aromantic person can just be feel like this is great. I'm hanging out with a mate, having fun, chilling out, getting to chat loads with them, forming a maybe deep emotional connection still, and really just really bonding. But the romantic will be thinking, oh my gosh, this is a really deep emotional connection. I'm feeling romance with this. I'm feeling aesthetic attraction. Really want to hold their hand right now. Really want to feel close to them, right? Some aromantics even like cuddling. So they might have their friends around and want to cuddle on the sofa. For a romantic person, that would be like, you really fancy me. You're super into me. This is what they would usually think. And wow, are we in a relationship now because you're cuddling me? That would be often how a romantic person would think. But aromantic is just like, I'm hanging out with my best mate and I just enjoy the cuddle, just cuddling them because that's just normal for them. So it can get really confusing. This is why it's very important that you verbalize how you're feeling and how your asexuality is for you in different scenarios, how your asexuality is for you in general. Like, what type of asexual are you? How do you fall on the asexual spectrum? What does your asexuality mean to you? What's your boundaries? What's your standards? What do you like? What you don't do you not like in friendships, in relationships, in dating scenarios? Because we're not all the same. And I've had situations in the past where I've been attracted to some aromantic guys, for example, and they've just been chatting to me for ages via text message because they just think I'm a really good friend and that's the way they bond. And I've been thinking, God, this guy must be really into me because he is messaging me for ages. Like, it might be like a couple of hours conversation, texting me, and we've got loads of things in common. We're getting on really well. And he's just not thinking that way. So it's really important that you find out if you are asexual and you come across someone else who's asexual, what type of asexual they are, because that can really change the dynamic or the way you see the dynamic. Similarly, if you're heterosexual watching this and you're single and you're interested in dating or being in a relationship with an asexual person, you need to ask that person, what does asexuality mean to them? Get the asexual person to try and describe how they're feeling about different things, what behaviors are acceptable to them, what they think in their everyday life, in everyday kind of scenarios in general, and get to know the asexual person. Because if you don't get to know the asexual person, how can you know what's acceptable behavior to them or not? If you're a highly sexual person and you're talking to a sex repulsed asexual, it's probably not going to work. It's either going to be really short term, the relationship, or non-existent from the beginning. And a lot of asexuals, they don't want their heart broken. They don't want to be messed around. They're not looking for something short term or casual. And this is where it can get really tricky on dating sites. Like, if you're an asexual person that's on a dating site, you usually, the majority of times, for most asexuals, if they want a relationship, they want something serious and long term. There are exceptions to this. I've known of a guy, for example, who was just in a guy abroad who at one point years ago I was talking to, and he's like, oh, I'm only interested in casual short-term relationship. I'm like, I'm not interested in that. I'm really not. And I think for anyone who's really serious about their own emotions, heart, and love life, they want serious because they don't want to get their heart broken, right? It doesn't mean to say every asexual's like this. And if you're on the more sexual end of the asexual spectrum, then maybe you're more up for casual relationship or short term. But in general, I think if an asexual is looking for a relationship, most of us want something long term. And coming back to what I said earlier about some people think that asexuality is like an experience. It's a bit like a red letter day. I've had guys in my inbox on dating sites go, "Oh, I'd like to have an asexual experience." It's like, my heart is not to be played with. My emotions are not to be played with, and neither's other asexuals. We're not some sort of novelty that you can try on for size, or a coat you can try on for size. And then when you get bored because it was exciting in the beginning, because you're like, "Oh, I'm with an asexual. I've never been with that sexuality before, but now I'm done." You know what I mean? It's just horrible. It's like using an asexual person. I don't want that for asexuals, you know? If you're interested in asexuality, if you're interested in dating or being in a relationship with someone who's asexual, then get to know the truth about asexuality. That asexuality is not a choice. I hate it when I was on dating sites and the guy would come in and say, "Oh, so why did you choose to be asexual?" I feel like screaming and tearing my hair out. I think that's such a dismissive attitude, so rude, so inconsiderate, so unthoughtful, very unknowledgeable, very ignorant. And that's not the way to speak to an asexual person. Because I could equally turn around to you and say, "Okay, why did you choose to be heterosexual? Like, why did you not choose to be bisexual or pansexual, for example? You know, why?" I could ask you that question, but you'd be like looking at me gone out thinking, "Well, why would I be that way? If I put in my profile that I'm heterosexual, why would I be anything different? Why, you know?" And then you would think that it's not a choice. So why are you speaking like that to asexuals? It's rude. You know, find out what asexuality means to the person. Talk to the person as an actual human being, a person. Find out if you're compatible. If you love sex and you've got a sex repulsed asexual, that isn't going to work. Not long term. If they're looking for something long term and you're looking for something long term, then don't bother wasting each other's time. You're just wasting each other's time and life, and it's going to lead to heartache and pain, either for both of you or at least one of you. And that's not fair. I hate it when people go around breaking people's hearts and don't give a shit. I'm not that type of person, you know, but there are unfortunately people like that in the world. Often these people have personality disorders, you know, or they're avoidant types. And it's not good. You know, it's like they don't care about people's emotions and who they hurt and who they trample on to get what they want. And this isn't the way to be in life. This isn't a good thing to be. This is not nice. People should be treated with respect and kindness and lovingness and caringness. And if you can't do that with someone, then be with someone. But stop with all the stereotypes. Stop thinking every asexual has never had sex. Yes, there's a good proportion of asexuals that have never had sex. And another thing, being on dating sites, if someone says they don't want sex in their bio or told you that, you don't have to then question them as to why don't they want sex. What's happened in your life to make you not want sex? What trauma have you been through? Would you ask yourself these questions if you're heterosexual, for example? Like, what trauma did you go through to identify as heterosexual? Because, you know, you can identify, for example, as gay because you were worried about what your family would think. Like, what thing happened to you to make you be heterosexual? Do you know what I mean? Why don't you just throw the questions back on yourself? If you wouldn't answer those yourself, or you think these are stupid questions, or you think these are relevant questions or rude questions, you know, why do you ask them to asexuals? It doesn't matter what someone's reason is for not wanting sex. If they don't want sex, they don't want it. Sex has to be a consensual thing. It has to be wanted. Unwanted sexual contact is known as sexual abuse. Do I really need to spell it out to you? So every person that's on dating sites that go, "Oh, what made you be asexual?" Or "What made you decide to not like sex? Why don't you like it? What happened to you?" That is all irrelevant. Because at the end of the day, if someone doesn't want sex, they don't want sex. What more do you need to know? If you love sex and you want it, why are you even having this conversation with the person? Why are you going on at them? There's no need for it. You can ask someone like, "When did you discover you're asexual? How did you discover you're asexual?" You can ask these questions. These questions are relevant. They're exploratory. You can ask them how long have they known they're asexual, these type of questions. But asking someone rude questions like, why don't they want sex? And, oh, if you're not going to have sex with me, what are you going to do for me? Like someone's your slave or owes you anything. Stop having a male sense of entitlement, or any entitlement, depending whatever gender you are. No one owes you sex. You're not entitled to sex just because you're in a relationship with someone, dating someone, or just because someone says they love you. Like I said, love is not the same as sex. Just because you're going on a date with someone doesn't mean to say they owe you sex. Even if you're married, someone doesn't owe you sex. It's their body. They can do what they like with it. So stop saying rude things to asexuals. Asexual is not a disorder. It's not some sort of phase. It's not the same as a medical condition that prevents you having sex. It's not due to sexual trauma. If you've had sexual trauma, work through that with a therapist, because there's a real problem for some people, real difficulty. It's genuine. Stop thinking all asexuals don't watch porn. I wished asexuals didn't watch porn in terms of guys, because when I was interested in guys, asexual guys, a lot of them still watch porn, and I personally don't like it if a guy is watching porn if he's in a relationship with me. So that just really put me off a load of asexual guys, because a lot of them still watch porn. I don't have a problem with the guy masturbating, but if he's masturbating to porn, then I don't like it. Right? I just don't like it at all. It's like a form of cheating to my mind. But every asexual is different. Some asexuals don't care if their partner looks at porn. So, get to find out what the individual asexuals like, what they want, what they need, what they desire. And don't think every asexual is the same. I like younger guys. I get attracted to young guys. I'm an asexual cougar, a younger asexual cougar, but I don't want sex with them. That's very interesting. It's very different to the norm. So I have some sexual behavior, but zero sexual attraction. Again, that's different. So sexual attraction is not the same as sexual action. I hope you found this video useful, helpful, insightful. Pop a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an episode. If you've got any comments, queries, or questions, please post them down below. Love to know what you think. If you want me to make certain videos on specific topics to do with asexuality or the asexual spectrum, please post that down below. And I'll see you soon on the next video live stream. Lots of love. Don't forget to get a copy of Diary Confessions of a Hyper-Romantic Asexual, best-selling book on Amazon, and also Asexual Perspectives, best-selling book. If you want to know more about asexuality, grab a copy of either of these. And I'll see you soon on the next video live stream. Lots of love. Take care. Bye. Bye.